Melinda Dillon, actress in Close Encounters of the Third Kind and A Christmas Story, dies at 83. A two-time Oscar nominee who also appeared in Bound for Glory, Slapshot, and on Broadway in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. Melinda Dillon, who received supporting Oscar nominations for her turns in Close Encounters of the Third Kind and Absence of Malice, and portrayed the doting mom in the holiday perennial A Christmas Story, died January 9, her family announced. She was 83. Right out of the gate, Dillon earned a Tony nomination and Theatre World Award in 1963 for her debut performance on Broadway as the childlike wife, Honey, in the original production of Edward Albee's Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. Later, the Arkansas native played two characters opposite David Carradine, Woody Guthrie's first wife, Mary, and a dark-haired folk singer named Memphis Sue in the biopic of Bound for Glory, 1976, directed by Hal Ashby. Was a lesbian hockey wife in George Roy Hill's Slapshot, 1977, and portrayed John Lithgow's wife in the family film Harry and the Hendersons, 1987. Her big screen resume also included Norman Jewison's Fist as the girlfriend and wife of a teamster played by Sylvester Stallone, Barbara Streisand's The Prince of Tides, 1991, as the suicidal sister of Nick Nolte's character, and Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia, 1999, as the wife of a philandering quiz show host, Philip Baker Hall. She was married to late actor Richard Libertini from 1963 until their 1978 divorce, and they had a son. In Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, 1977, Dillon portrayed Jillian Guler, the single mother who heads to Devil's Tower with her next-door neighbor, Richard Dreyfuss, in search of her 3-year-old son, who's been abducted by aliens through the kitchen doggy door. Ashby had recommended her to Spielberg for the part, and she was hired just days before filming began. Sidney Pollack's Absence of Malice, 1981, had her back with Slapshot co-star Paul Newman, this time playing a Catholic woman who takes her own life after a reporter, Sally Field, writes a story about her abortion. At the Oscars, Dillon lost out to Vanessa Redgrave of Julia in 1978 and to Maureen Stapleton of Reds in 1982. Still, unlike these two, Dillon shows up every holiday season on TV rebroadcasts as the sweet mother of Ralphie, Peter Billingsley, and Randy, Ian Petrella, and wife of Darren McGavin's Old Man Parker in A Christmas Story, 1983, directed by Bob Clark. In the film, Sam Kashner noted in a 2016 article for Vanity Fair, Dillon has a sweetly comedic presence that threatens to dissolve into creative anarchy. She's a vigilant mom, but is still a child at heart, a parent when she encourages her youngest, Randy, a fussy eater, to pretend he's a pig at a trough. Randy really gets into it, snorting and plunging his face into his meatloaf and mashed potatoes, while he and his mom dissolve into fits of laughter. As the New York Times pointed out, the poor woman hadn't had a hot meal for herself in 15 years. Melinda Ruth Dillon was born on October 13, 1939, in Hope, Arkansas. Her mother divorced and remarried an Army veteran, and she lived on several military bases, including one in Nuremberg, Germany, before graduating from high school in Chicago. While working as the coat check girl for the Second City, she stepped in for an ill Barbara Harris and performed a skit, setting her acting career in motion. Second City is also where she met Libertini, who is a member of the improvisational comedy troupe. After studying acting at DePaul University, she came to New York and was cast opposite Uta Hagen, Arthur Hill, and George Grizzard in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. However, she left the intense play after 9 months and spent time in a psychiatric hospital. "I was in Virginia Woolf and I just went crazy. It was really that simple," she said in a 1976 interview with the New York Times. "I think it was the way I was living. The play was so long and the actors union wouldn't let us play the matinee. We had to have a whole different cast for that. But I was called in to do it many times because the gal would get sick. I would do it 3 hours in the afternoon, then study with Lee Strasberg for 2 hours, and do the play 3 hours at night. Then George Grizzard left to do Hamlet, and a strange thing happened. I had learned to lean on George hard, and I just crumbled inside. I don't know why. I had had the American dream to go to New York and study with Lee Strasberg. I guess I just wasn't prepared for it all to happen so quickly in New York. I'm not sophisticated. I hadn't had any kind of cultural education at all, so when it came to meeting people and presenting any kind of ideas I might have to offer, I would be terrified. Meanwhile, Sandy Dennis went on to play Honey in Mike Nichols' 1966 film version of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf and won an Oscar. Dillon returned to Broadway in 1967, spending 2 seasons in the hit You Know I Can't Hear You When the Water's Running. And in 1970, for a second city reunion via Paul Sills Story Theater. In between, she made her big screen debut in The April Fools 1969, starring Jack Lemmon. Dillon went on to appear in other films, including The Muppet Movie 1979, Songwriter 1984, Sioux City 1994, To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar 1995, How to Make an American Quilt 1995, and Reign Over Me 2007. She also guest starred on such TV shows as The Jeffersons, Picket Fences, and Heartland. Early life. Dillon was born October 13, 1939 in Hope, Arkansas, but raised in Cullman, Alabama. After spending 4 years in Germany, Dillon attended Hyde Park High School and the Goodman High School of Drama at the Art Institute of Chicago, now at DePaul University in Chicago. Though best known for her supporting performances in films, Dillon began as an improvisational comedian and stage actress. Her first major role was as Honey in the original 1962 Broadway production of Edward Albee's Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, for which she was nominated for the Tony Award for Best Performance by a Featured Actress in a Play, and she also appeared in You Know I Can't Hear You When the Water's Running and Paul Sills Story Theater. In 1959, she acted in The Cry of Jazz, an influential short film dealing with jazz music and black culture. Dillon's first feature film was The April Fools in 1969. She also worked in television, notably in a guest starring role in 1969 on an episode of the hit TV series Bonanza titled A Lawman's Lot Is Not a Happy One, Season 11. She co-starred with David Carradine in the 1976 Woody Guthrie biopic Bound for Glory and was nominated in the Best Female Acting Debut category of the Golden Globe for her role as Memphis Sue. The following year, she was nominated for a Best Supporting Actress Oscar for the role of a mother whose child is abducted by aliens in Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. That same year, she made an uncredited cameo in The Muppet Movie and had a role in the comedy Slapshot with Paul Newman. 4 years later, Dillon was again nominated for a Best Supporting Actress Oscar for her performance as a suicidal teacher in Absence of Malice in 1981, working again with Newman. Melinda Dillon, actress in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, last words before she died. The fact that life has no meaning is a reason to live. Moreover, the only one.